Franchise Envy, my series where I get to talk to happy, successful franchise owners. Today I have Ibrahim, and he's with ManCave for Men.
Up next,
I'm working for a greater value, right? So I'm working for a greater project. I'm working for a greater mission.
It sounds like you're building a great culture, and you're a good guy to work for.
Know your people, hear them out, trust them. Take their opinions whenever you're trying to make a decision.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lance. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, all the way from Sarasota, Florida. The truth is, you're still in Sarasota, Florida. But how did you get into? You got three locations. How'd you become a multi-unit franchisee with ManCave for Men?
Absolutely. You know, it started pre-COVID. It started pre-COVID. I was looking right before COVID hit, maybe 2017, roughly 2017, 2018. I was looking for something that I can do on the side. I have a full-time job, and I wanted a part-time gig, I should say. And then I was looking on Facebook and ran through the ads on Facebook, and then I saw the franchise ad. I filled out my information, and then maybe I think the next day I got a call from Ahmad, the franchise owner, and says, you know, I saw your information on Facebook, came to me. I recognized the name. He's Middle Eastern as well. I'm Middle Eastern, so I recognized the name. So I thought I'd give you a call. And he says to me, "What do you think about the barber business?" You know, and honestly, at that point, I'm like, maybe not. I'm not a barber by trade. I don't know what to do from a business perspective. And he gave me some information about the franchise. It sounded very interesting. And he said, "Let me talk to my broker and see what location we can get you." And then maybe the following day after that, I got a call from the broker and says, "Hey, Ibrahim, you know, we have a location. It's located at the University Town Center. And I can tell you, University Town Center here in Sarasota is like gold. It's like what everybody wants to hear, you know. It's the prime location." And once he said, "We can get you in at UTC," I said, this is it. This is what I have to do." Right? So, and that's basically how I signed up, and I went for it. And then years later, I'm on location number 3.
So I have to understand. Did you look at any other franchises, or this was it?
This was it actually. You know, I had a little bit of experience with business in the past. Prior to this, I had gone to Subway school at some point throughout my life to help out one of my cousins. So I had a little bit of a background, maybe in the food industry. But then when Ahmad called me, and I could tell you, you know, on my first impression, it was the gut feeling, right? It was the ease of the conversation, the vision, the potential, maybe the honesty and the transparency that sold me the most. And they were basically behind their words from that perspective. They said, you know, it was instant follow-up with him, which is the CEO of the company or the CEO of the franchise, and then instant follow-up with the broker. And I said, these guys are serious. They mean business, and this is exactly what I want to be a part of.
Did you go to visit their corporate location in Boca?
I did. I visited their corporate location. You know, after the conversation that I had with the broker, and as I was starting to get serious, and I started visiting the actual location here a little more often than I visited the corporate location in Boca. I met Ahmad's wife and there, Marlene, and again, it's a very personal interaction. It kind of solidified my gut feeling, and I said, these are the people that I should be joining.
So what was your investment in your first location?
Money-wise, so I think build out. So a couple of, you know, I think what I did back then is I was shopping around, and it was the time for COVID, and it was a little bit of an interesting story. I'm not much of a contractor myself, so but Ahmad is a contractor by trade, I think, initially, and so he has a lot of information from that perspective. So I was trying to get some estimates, and it was COVID time, and the supply chain was messy, and the estimates were a lot higher than what I was expecting. So I picked up the phone. I said, "Ahmad, man, these estimates here are not like South Florida. They're a little more expensive in Sarasota. And what can we do?" And Ahmad says, "How about we do this? I'll submit for the. I'll be the contractor, and you can help me do the job." And that was it wasn't just my first franchise, but it was also my first construction job. And I can tell you that, and it was maybe daily conversations with Ahmad, maybe twice a day, 3 times a day. I think I was calling him more than Marlene was calling him, and by the time, his wife, by the time we built the franchise, built the spot, it was a beautiful store. Everybody that had walked in loved it. That coordination between me and Ahmad kind of made it. And that was the story. It took us a few months of construction, a little more delayed because of COVID and supply chain, but I think we finally did it.
So what was it, about 250 or 300,000?
Roughly, it was 225 to be exact.
Okay, great. And what kind of money can you make on a location like that? Because look, let's face it, everybody listening is wanting to understand, do I get into a restoration business? Do I do a restaurant? Do I do a man cave for men? Hopefully it's for profit, correct?
Absolutely, it's absolutely for profit. So, the beauty of being in this franchise business, or in the barber business, is that it doesn't take a lot of effort to run, right? So the barbers themselves are somewhat of they eat what they kill in some sense, if you think about it, right? So they have to be there. They work hard. They're artists. They're talented. And this can be pretty profitable depending on how you run your business, right? So if you optimize the schedule enough, and you know how to get these people in and book your chair, this could be a very profitable business. And you can easily take a look between, I'd say, 15 to 20 grand per month if you do it well.
Wow. So this is a business in your case, you open for 225 or so. You can make 200,000 a year if you play your cards right.
Absolutely, no question. And if you know your team, for sure.
That's lovely. I love it. So you have 3 locations now.
Correct.
And who runs? You hired a manager to run each location, because you're not in the business full time. How many hours a week are you putting in?
So I don't put in a ton a week. I would say maybe about 10 to 15 total. So what I do have is I have a manager and assistant manager at each of the location. They have to be barbers. They're barbers. The manager is a barber. The assistant manager is a barber. They manage the day-to-day stuff, and I do have an accounting lady that works with me, and she does a lot of the accounting. So I do a lot of supervisory role from that perspective, and I would say maybe about 10, 15 hours per week on all 3 locations. The process is the same, the structure is the same, the flow is the same, so it doesn't take much, and everybody learns it, and we just move forward.
So how crazy did your entire family think you were when you told them, hey, I'm going to get into the barber business?
I would tell you. So I called my oldest sister. She's like my second mother. I think I was afraid to tell my mom that I was doing that. So I figured my oldest sister is probably my better route. So I called her and I told her, and then she said, "Well, Barber, what are you doing? What is this? What do you know about this?" And generally speaking, the barber business is a mom and shop situation. It's not necessarily much of a franchise. But what I did explain to her, that this is a unique opportunity. It's a unique franchise. It caters. It has a specific product from a convenience perspective. And the beauty of the barber business is that it's repetitive. The men, they keep coming. Every man needs a haircut at least once a month. And that's on the low end, right? So it's repetitive. So it is set up for success. And she's like, "But you don't know anything about barbering." And I said, "I can learn." And I have a bunch of support from the franchisors themselves. And I did tell her a little bit about the story. I told her what we're going to be doing, where the location was, and she was very supportive.
Yeah, which is amazing, because it's usually the opposite. Because you just said it, you don't know anything about barbering.
Correct.
But typically in my life, in franchising, you could fill in the blank. Friend owns an air conditioning company. He knew nothing about air conditioning. It's just the way it goes. So now you're already a mentor. Obviously, you're a big franchisee with ManCave, smaller brand. They're growing. So I'm sure you're talking to a lot of new franchisees. Yeah. What are some of the mistakes that people are making?
I think the money in the franchise, or this specific business, And two things. One, the first thing is that I think if you know your barbers, you know the barbers in general are artists, right? And I think a lot of the franchisees feel to recognize that we're working with artists, and our artists are free form, are free flowing, right? They like
Free spirit.
they're free spirit, exactly. They like to have that spirit. They like to keep it that way, and
They
if
like
they're
to be
happy,
late.
that's its own battle. Which I think
Got to be flexible with the artist.
you absolutely have to be flexible, and I think if you kind of turn a blind eye to some of their tardiness, sometimes they tend to appreciate that. They tend to appreciate that you're there for them. And there was one thing the one barber told me one time. He said barbers like clarity, and that was maybe in my initial stages when I first started the franchise, where I first started the business as well. So when I started giving them transparency and clarity, this is when I took off.
Yeah, and really what I'm hearing you say between that, you sound like a great boss. You're very understanding. You're
Thank you.
not in the business full time. You're not going to be a pain in the ass. Some bosses, as you know,
Correct.
are unusually tough
Correct.
and then have a really high turnover. And it sounds like you're building a great culture and you're a good guy to work for.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and that's the goal, right? So I think culture is truly what it is, what it's all about. At the end of the day, this is a business of dealing with humans, right? And as much as we think that we're logical creatures, we're emotional creatures, and we have to take that into account from that perspective. And I think if the people feel that you have their best interest at heart, and which we actually do, then they're more than likely to stay. I mean, I've had the same people with me since the first location, and I've just grown above that. I've had a couple of people here and come and go, but the majority of the barbers that have started with me have been with me since day one.
That's amazing. That's a testament to how you run things and what kind of boss, and obviously a great team you built.
Thank you.
You know, you're welcome. Give a little of a story as to really what ManCave is all about, because it's not just about a haircut.
Correct.
So it's obviously hence the name ManCave. It's a comfortable place for men to come and get taken care of and relax. What are the services?
Absolutely. So a few things. So a part of when I was starting the kind of think about opening up another location, and I saw how successful location number one, and I think I'll tell you this. So I opened up location number one, and 5 months in, I was telling my barbers that we need to get another location, and they thought I was crazy, right? And then back then, I looked at it from an objective eye, and I said, okay, what does ManCave have from a franchise perspective that other franchises have? So I looked and I said, okay, do they have a brand, right? I looked at McDonald's. I said, why McDonald's popular? Because they have a brand. Do they have a brand? Absolutely, they have a brand. Why is 7-Eleven so popular? Why is it working so much? And it's because it's convenient and it has repetition. I'm like, okay, perfect. I have the same exact thing. I have the convenience from a system perspective. I have the repetition. The clients are going to continue to come back. So they continue. They have that model. In addition to that, the franchise owners themselves have been very supportive all the way through. I figured if I'm going to go into another construction project, that I'm going to have Mad there to back me, to be supportive on that end. And I can tell you that because of what I felt during my first encounter, how supportive they are, and that personal relationship that I developed with the franchise owners themselves, and I recognized that they had my best interest at heart, then this is exactly what made me jump to the second franchise, right? And then this is exactly what makes me jump to the third franchise, is because I'm working for a greater value, right? So I'm working for a greater project. I'm working for a greater mission. That's what I got from them. The way they treat me as a franchisee, and the amount of support that they give, and the less micromanagement that they do, is exactly how I deal with my barbers, and it's been a very supportive environment on that end. And the quality of the work is there, because if you keep the barbers happy and they show up to work happy, those artists are absolutely going to give you a good product.
Amazing. Share with the audience, one bit of wisdom that is essentially the cornerstone of your success in all of this.
Know your people. Hear them out, I think. Know your people, hear them out, trust them. Take their opinions whenever you're trying to make a decision. I can tell you this: I'm not a barber, right? So, but I do have regular meetings with my manager. And then when it comes to barbering specifically, I always ask them what would they do. And then based on the response that I would get from their perspective, then I implement, and it works because it's a decision coming from a barber to a barber, and it works every single time. The only decision making that I make is truly the business aspect, right? So how do I optimize the books? How do I make sure the customer service is up to par? The other, I think, is seeking client feedback. I think when our clients leave our door every single time, is they get a text message and I seek their feedback on what went right and what went wrong. And I can assure you, we call every single client that is not happy or satisfied with their service, and we bring them back. The other thing is that from a franchise perspective, generally speaking, when people leave their barber, they also leave the shop, right? Because they're very uncomfortable sitting in another barber's chair because they feel like they're cheating on the barber, right? And because they build this, bonding with the barber, and they feel like they're disappointing their barber because they're leaving them. One of the things that I did is I made it okay through multiple meetings and ongoing discussion. This continues to be our drive, is that we make it okay amongst the barbers to see each other's clients sitting in different chairs, because we're not necessarily much of an individual, we're more of a team, and it's okay and acceptable. And if the barbers feel that way, automatically your client feels that way too. And if your barber is not busy today, they're okay sitting in the chair next to that barber and continuing still having the conversation, and it's casual and it's not quote unquote cheating.
I like that. I like that philosophy. Abraham, you've been fabulous. I wish you continued success. Thanks for sharing your story with me today.
Thank you very much, Lance. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
If you're ready to talk about franchise opportunities, hit the link below to schedule a call. My services are free, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.